All right, we're back again, talking about the divine artist, who is this mythical character that was able to go through uh, all of time, space and time, and meet the 250 glass bead game members. So he has been able to take a pilgrimage, a journey, uh, to meet all of these Glass Bead Game members in this mythical place called the Glass Bead Game. And we're on to the 65th person, and these are all ranked as importance to the Glass Bead Game. And each person that the divine artist meets, a little piece of that person rubs off in a way into the divine artist, all of their ideas and thoughts, and are in effect creating the ultimate person in the divine artist. So we're on to the 65th most important person of all time, and his name is William James, and he came up with what was called the stream of consciousness, and was one of the first that really started to study consciousness. And there's a movie called Mindville that you can go to. These characters can go to in that movie, and they can meet various people throughout history, such as Plato and Rene Descartes and Buddha. And William James is one of the people that run this carnival, this fair in Mindville. And what his attraction is in the movie is that you go on a roller coaster ride, which is the stream of consciousness. And if you look up Mindville, you'll see some. It's a cartoon, and you'll see what I'm talking about as far as this roller coaster ride and the stream of consciousness. Number 66 is Alan Turing, and he came up with Turing machines, and in what are really infinity machines, and the term super task. And a lot of what Alan Turing did, I believe, was the foundation of computers today. And he came up with this idea that you could perform an infinite amount of tasks in a limited amount of time, in theory. And quantum computing is kind of taking off on this idea that if you can have possibly up to 40 entangled pairs, you could compute at such a speed that it would actually exceed the knowledge of the entire universe. There's a hundred and there's there's a limited amount of bits in the universe, and it's 10 to the power of 127. And this is kind of a scientifically proven fact that the universe that we perceive is limited. Well, there's this theory that quantum computing can ultimately uh, exceed this due to these entangled pairs computing at both an on and off position all at the same time while unperceived. Um, so Alan Turing is very respected and very important in history, and he's 66 in the Glass Bead Game. He ultimately committed suicide because he was ridiculed so bad over his homosexuality, and that was a tragic part of his life and his death. Number 67, Lisa Randall is living today, and she is a quantum physicist, theoretical physicist, that maybe at Harvard, possibly. And she wrote a couple of books. One is talks about the possibility of these additional brains and manifolds and many worlds theory. And she has her lectures are very easy to understand. She uses pictures and graphs, and really she's very easy to understand and makes a lot of sense. Um, she has also collaborated with artists in New York City, and they did an art exhibit. So I think there were about 20 artists that came up with art and kind of related this to this art and science, which is kind of what the glass bead game, Castalia, the Academy is all about anyways, merging all of these ideas. So she merged together in this work of art some ideas that can, with the view of moving towards this more of this transcendent man, Superman, Overman that Friedrich Nietzsche talked about. She also she's very talented. She also wrote composed a symphony, I guess, and so she's just a very unique, interesting person, and it would be nice to meet her someday or somehow get in contact with her. I think I may have sent her an email once. The next person, also still alive, 68, number 68, Paul Davies. I think he's Australian, and he's a realist. Um, I've read many of his books on time and quantum mechanics and physics and God, and um, he is very interesting to listen to and read. And his lectures online are very good, very easy to understand again. Came up with one theory, theory for a theory, as he called it, as that possibly the past is not fully settled yet, which was kind of interesting when you think of quantum mechanics, the collapse of the wave function, and how anything with extension is, and we're viewing reality, so there is extension to our viewing of reality from ourselves to object, that there's an infinite amount of distance within that difference between subject and object. And so he thinks possibly the past is not fully settled yet if it's unobserved. But he's a realist. He believes that there's an answer to the universe. He believes there is an ultimate truth. In one of the videos, he got into the idea of possibly the self-creating loop again, which Douglas Hofstadter tried to get into as well. The next person, 69, Georgius. I don't know a lot about him, but his idea is so unique that he had to be included in the glass bead game. And he lived around 3 or 500, I think about 300 BC. And he was one of the first solipsists that believed that only his mind existed, and that you could not prove other minds. Rene Descartes somewhat believed this as well. And Johann Fichte and Friedrich Holderlin in their Divine Eye, possibly this combined divine eye merged with the divine God, the mind of God, and that this is the preceding essence of all being and all reality. So that's just very fascinating. Number 70 is Pythagoras, and he lived around 300 BC also. Had his secret society in which they believed the universe was in perfect symmetrical uniformity, and that anything that was then discovered that was outside of the realm of anything being in this perfect symmetry, possibly maybe like pi is a infinite infinite decimal to the number pi, so it's not really an exact, it's like an irrational number, Well, anybody that would come up with these and prove these irrational numbers that didn't quite make the universe fit together, um, completely symmetrical, like 1 plus 1 equals 2, they would kill him. They would drown him in the sea. So Pythagoras was kind of an amazing person, and that's not a great thing. And but he's definitely included, very interesting, and is included in the glass bead game. Number 71, Antoine Saint-Exupéry, was included on the cover and in the painting of the book that I did, The Journey to Qualia, as a poet. He did The Little Prince, and it's a short little book movie that this little kid flies around and is looking for this perfect reality, and it was such a good story, and I wanted to have a poet on the on this painting. I had 10 people on this painting, which I ultimately had a picture taken of and made into the cover of the book, The Journey to Qualia. If you get a chance, Google that. It's at Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com, and it really turned out good. It's kind of interesting. Number 72 is also a poet, Johann von Goethe. Had a lot of influence on the German idealists. Wrote a book about how flowers and plants grow, and he tied this to how possibly the mind and the self grow. And there was a video I saw on this, and it was all real fascinating. And so he was another poet that was just very scientific and philosophical, and is number 72 in the glass bead game. Number 73, of all the people that the Divine Artists have been able to meet on this journey, Robert Pirsig. He wrote the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and it's a book about values from a unique perspective, and like this higher self again, almost like appreciating every sunrise every day, and so that was just one of the classic books ever written. Number 74 is Galileo. He was persecuted by the Catholic Church when he discovered that the earth was not the center of the universe. So they were going to condemn him or kill him. I believe he was under house arrest, possibly for his entire life, so that he would not spread this truth about the earth being the center of the universe, that it was not, and that it didn't tie into the dogma, the significance of man and so forth. So he was persecuted, and when I was in Rome, in the St. Peter's Basilica, a statue now is actually in there of Galileo. About 15 years ago, the Pope or Catholic Church admitted that they were wrong over this, and have put a statue of Galileo in St. Peter's Basilica, and it's quite interesting and touching to see that. Number 75 is Werner Heisenberg. Came up with the uncertainty principle, and that you cannot have knowledge of the direction of a particle and its location. You cannot have 100% knowledge of those two facts simultaneously, and that this is not a shortcoming of any scientific method or anything, but that this is an actual feature of nature. And if you really dig into this, this adds to this elusiveness of nature and the ultimate answer of truth and being, that it is eternally elusive and indescribable and undefinable. And that's really an amazing thing, how that all ties together with the glass bead game. Moving on to number 76, Isaac Newton. Um, he was actually a mean person in his life. He had people killed. That he was in charge of the currency, and anybody that made fake currency, he would have them killed. I guess he was somewhat of a mean person. You know, we try to have nice people in here, but he's such an important person, he has to be included. Same with Pythagoras. They have to be included in the glass bead game. Isaac Newton invented calculus independent of Gottfried Leibniz. He also came up with the laws of motion, and really this is the deterministic real world in which we live. And I actually did a video, kind of a play on word video, and some people have gone down this road for real, thinking that if there is a beginning to time, and there was at the Big Bang, and our universe is limited, and everything is cause and effect, that everything is predetermined, and everything has a cause and effect, and that you know, like a clockwork, everything that's going to happen in the future because you know what the initial cause was. So this idea of determinism versus free will has really been kicked around and talked about. And I did a video, and there's really a lot of logical arguments that would support that everything is predetermined, this theory of determinism, which is just an amazing play on words or logical argument or whatever you want, because obviously we think we have a free will, and we pick up this pen, and we have a free will to do what we want. But in reality, we live in this limited cause and effect world where everything may be predetermined, including our thoughts, possibly in the mind of God or something like that. So that's just amazing. Number 77 is Brian Greene. He came up with the idea of string theory. A lot of current scientists have put this aside as this absolutely is not a real scientific theory, where there may be 11 or 23 dimensions and everything is vibrations. The entire universe is made up of vibrations of one-dimensional units. Now this is something we can't conceive of in our minds, because everything's three-dimensional in what we view as having extension. But mathematically, you can work with this type of theory, and Lisa Randall does this as well. Mathematically, we can easily work with this type of theory and come up with many worlds, many dimensions, and work with that. And it's not difficult at all. So in a way, it is a real theory, but it can't be conceived of in our 3 or 4 dimensional mind of length, width, height, and time, space and time. So he's very interesting. There was a movie made with, I can't think of her name, she's deaf. The woman is deaf, and she's a good actress. I like her. She goes through this whole journey of like the majesty of reality, and the real significance and beauty and the unknown and mystery about reality. Number 78 is Richard Bach, and he wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And what this book is about is exceeding limits. Again, going back to, in our cause and effect world, our limited space and time world, everything is discrete, everything is limited. Well, this bird, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, wanted to fly to the sun and wanted to exceed limits, and it's really an awesome book, and kind of has this Zen Buddhism type flavor to it. He also wrote other books, Illusions, and some other books. He really got into this reality and altered states of reality, but just exceeding limits in a very real way. And it's one of the best books ever written. It's a very short book, easy to read. Number 79 is David Chalmers. He is studies consciousness. I think he's in Australia, and he's got long hair and kind of trippy looking, and is very interesting, and looks like he's wasted all the time. But I really enjoy him and like him, and seems like a nice guy, an interesting guy, and um, just one of those guys, a philosophy of mind and consciousness, and this elusive nature of who am I and what is the self and what is consciousness. And a lot of this goes back to Rene Descartes, this mind-body dualism, and what is thought? Is it brain waves, which again is has almost this discreteness to it, that every thought we have is discrete. So David Chalmers is real interesting. Number 80 is William Blake. Is a poet. Just the one thing that I remember or know about him is that one of the lines he wrote was eternity in an hour. I can't remember the name of the poem, and that it may be that name, but there's several lines, and it's kind of this paradox again of eternity in an hour. Every hour in our life really is an eternity to be enjoyed and appreciated. Number 81 is Niels Bohr. In 1931, came up with the theory of the atom. And it's funny because he modeled it kind of after the universe, where you have the nucleus, and then you have electrons and protons and neutrons circling around. And he took an idea from Max Planck that the orbits have to be a set limit apart based on this variable of h again, and that those are the only allowable orbits that these electrons can jump to and from when they're stable and unstable, and there's nothing in between. So that's all fascinating, and you come up with this theory of an electron cloud. And again, you think of atomism, going back to Leucippus and Democritus and Planck, atomism, but there's this electron cloud and elusiveness to it as well. He also was heavily involved in the 1927 and Copenhagen interpretations of quantum mechanics. And it's been mentioned that a debate that he had with Albert Einstein in 1930 may be one of the best intellectual debates that have ever occurred. Einstein with his relativity and realism, God does not play dice, and Niels Bohr more of the quantum mechanics, indeterminacy of the underlying nature of reality. Number 82 is Johannes Brahms. He lived in the late, around 1890, died I think around 1900 or 1902 or 1898. When he died, another composer wrote the Elegy for Brahms, and this was played in 1915, and I can't think of this other guy's name, as a celebration of his life, that he was the greatest composer and artist of all time. Well, that symphony was not played again until 1978, the Elegy for Brahms. So it was those two moments in history recognizing Johannes Brahms as possibly the greatest artist of all time, the most beautiful artist, had only been played up to that point 2 times in the history of the world. So that just made it really special and amazing. 83 is Joseph Mazur. He is living today. I'm in contact with him. He is a professor of mathematics at Marlborough University, and wrote The Motion Paradox, which is really all about Zeno's paradoxes. And he lays it all out and goes through this, and even puts in another paradox where this dog is chasing something and going back and forth, and at the end of 1 minute, is the dog facing forward or backwards? As it turns out, in this mathematical problem that they had submitted to some magazine, nobody came up with the answer, and the reason is because there is no answer. The dog can be facing forward or backwards, and both answers are correct. So this kind of ties back to this there's no ultimate truth to the universe idea when you start digging into infinite regress and paradoxes and the mystery of being and life and mathematics and so forth. 84 is Edmund Husserl, studied being around 1890, 1900, and so forth. His student was Martin Heidegger. And I've tried reading Edmund Husserl. It's very difficult to read. Again, a German. I have trouble with these Germans, even though I love this German idealism. It's very slow and tedious getting through. I like the summary understanding of a person, and Heidegger and Husserl are very difficult to muddle through and get to this like short little 1 or 2 sentences that I can use in the glass bead game. But he was an ontologist and very important, and I have him as number 84 in the glass bead game. Number 85, very few people would know. Hugh Everett was a quantum physicist that around 1950 came up with a many worlds theory and really believed absolutely that there are many worlds, not just the world that we're perceiving. Well, he kind of went on tour and whatever, tried to expand on these ideas throughout the academic community and so forth, and nobody took him serious, so he quit as a college professor and just threw this idea out the window of this many worlds theory and just went into private business. Well, today his ideas, along with Bryce DeWitt, are fairly accepted as this is the way reality is, given that in the double slit experiment particles exist in a state of superposition and entangled pairs, and there's all this infinite amount of potential out there unperceived, and it kind of ties into this idea of David Hilbert, the many worlds and manifolds, and Lisa Randall and Brian Greene. Number 86 is St. Anselm, and what he wrote extensively on the idea of nothing, and I've read a lot of it, pretty much of it, and he was a saint or a priest or something, I guess, with the Catholic Church, or so he had this strong belief in God, but he also wrote extensively on what nothingness, what the meaning of nothingness is all about. So that was just amazing to me, and he's number 86. 87 is Leucippus. This was Democritus's mentor in 500 BC. Not many people would know Leucippus, but he's very important because he is the first known person possibly to come up with the theory of atomism, which everything in our reality is discrete. Our concepts are particles, particles of light, photons, everything is discrete and atomism. So that's just amazing that he would come up with that. He believed that everything was everywhere and unlimited. And Parmenides kind of went that way as well, I believe. Whereas ultimately Democritus talked about atomism and void, something and nothing. Um, Lucippus just believed that there was everything everywhere, and it had an infinite nature to it. Um, so I'll stop with that. That was the divine artist, all of the people that he's been able to meet. He is this sojourner that has taken this journey to meet all the important people in the glass bead game, and that's what makes him the divine artist, because they have all been incorporated into himself.